So they hired me as a brand manager. I still used to go to site. I used to do regular architecture things, but I also was working on the branding end of it. For 40K, that's 10K per week. That's 2.5 per day. So apart from my transport, it will just cover for buying a few smoke.
We are all creative. You can be a designer, you can be an architect, you can be a music producer, you can be an artist. We're all creatives. Like we turn
Yeah.
ideas into something. So I think that's just what creativity is, making something out of nothing. Someone can be hearing this and be wondering, like, how can I leave something that I'm doing now that I'm not really passionate about? I'm not finding fulfillment, and how do I navigate getting there? So I think this kind of stories, motivation or something for them, a reference for them to help them to navigate those decisions. But
Thank you.
yeah, let's talk about you. Who is David? Who is David Rotimi?
David Rotimi is a passionate creative. And maybe to say David Rotimi is a passionate, pragmatic creative, because I also realized early enough that as creative as I was also very pragmatic about what exactly I wanted from life and how I wanted that to turn out. And I think that's one of the reasons why my journey was so interesting, because I didn't want to be a creative for the rest of my life. I just wanted to do something that worked. And if it meant not being a creative for a few minutes, I didn't mind, because I had a bigger goal, and the bigger goal was to ensure that I express myself as much as possible, ensure that I help people do the same. David Rotimi is also very, very multifaceted. I do music. I'm a creative. I run a business. I'm a pastor. Talk. I write. I inspire people. So all of that is just God's way of helping people through the things that He has given me as gifts, as talents, and some skills that I've also learned along the line. But bulk of it revolves around helping people express themselves, making them a better version of themselves.
That's very, very profound. I think some of the things that you said that just piqued my attention. You mentioned the word passion, which, this for me, this podcast is all about. And as I told you, the name, The Hungry Creative. And I was telling you about the story of how the name came about. And I think there's something here, like there's a connection between both of us, obviously.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
like the passion that you mentioned in your journey has been like a critical element that has been like the catalyst of everything. My question is, how much role has passion played in your journey as as a creative and as a business person?
Passion has actually driven me to do things I never thought I would do. And I think that's the easiest way that I'll put it. Passion has just made me see the world not in a linear path.
Mm,
I because of how passionate I am, I don't see the world in a linear path. I don't see the world as, okay, immediately after you finish your master's, you must do your PhD, and then this, and then this, and then this. I don't see it like that. My passion has made me only see the world in terms of, is this possible? And once I'm able to answer the question, yes, it's possible. It doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter how many people have done it before or how many people haven't done it before. As long as it's possible, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. For example, it was very weird. I did my NYC after I got married. So imagine me in the NYC camp with with young people and telling them that, oh, I left my wife at home, and they're like, what? Are you married? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm married. And I was like 25 or 30, I was almost 26 I can't remember. And they were just looking at me like, guy, why did you get married before NYC? And I'm like, who says you have to do NYC before you get married?
mm,
Stuff like that are just the kind of things that passion has done. Because I was passionate about the person that was getting married to, my wife, Adibor. And I knew I didn't want to waste time. I didn't want to check any unnecessary boxes that didn't exist to get what I wanted to get done.
mm.
The passion has helped me to not see life in a linear path. It has just helped me to see possibilities. And as soon as I see possibilities, whether in my life or in the life of other people, once I'm able to see possibility, the goal for me next is, how can we get this done? So
Mm.
my passion always leads me to action.
That's so profound. You also mentioned pragmatism, being pragmatic about what you're also doing. Like it's not so much about just being passionate about it, it's also being able to like proceed to make decisions, right? Because in as much as you have all that drive, all that energy, you need to also have like a plan towards executing those things to bring them to life. For example, I'll make a reference to something that you're doing, like maybe like your business. I'll mention Gird, right? You have the clothing brand called Gird, and
Mhm.
I know that you're building that and it takes some effort. So how have you been able to, knowing your background? Like, I feel like a lot of people now, some people struggle with like being able to develop their ideas to becoming like an actual entity. How much has pragmatism played in terms of like building and being able to execute those passionate ideas that you've had?
Okay, thank you. Being pragmatic for me, sorry, I think before we go on to this question, I feel like this is a good place for us to actually, because I feel like our viewers may not get when you say, we have so many things in common. I feel like we should itemize it.
Right.
Just let them know what exactly is going on here. So
yeah.
maybe I should ask you right now. So what are the similarities that you found between our stories?
Okay.
Let's go as in-depth as possible.
As in-depth as possible. Okay. Okay, for me, let me just do a recap. From that post, I saw that first of all, we have the same career background in architecture.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think architecture is like the beginning of everything, like the journey. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's still some more background to it. When I still kept looking, like the more I looked, the more I saw, and the more I wondered what is really going on here. Because from what I saw, you also are into music. Yeah, I'm also very, very curious about music. I'm also very involved in music. I'm not really, really practicing music. Like I'm not using I'm not playing any instruments now, but music is something that I connect with, right? I just use it as a tool to get myself productive, or I'm just very.
But you also learned how to play drums.
Yeah, I play drums. I used to play drums growing up, like when I was a kid, when I was in church. Growing up, I was in a choir. I used to go to church a lot, for rehearsals. That was something that I grew up with, and yeah, we share that obviously because you also play the trumpet, as I got to know. Yeah, and you've composed songs which I've actually seen and listened to. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know you have 2 songs. One was for your wife, and I think there's another one that was a different one. But yeah, I'm sure of the one for your wife. I'm sure of that one for you. I even saw it was like 2 emojis of, I was like, this guy, who is this guy? I haven't composed a song yet, but maybe now I have motivation to pursue that. But yeah, so that was an interesting one. So I think music, not on your level, obviously, but yeah, at the very basic level, architecture, I think that's something that piqued my attention the most. Like when I saw your post, I was reading, I can't remember who exactly it was that reposted it or that liked it, because as you know, LinkedIn, it's it shows whatever you engage with on your other followers feed. So I was just scrolling through, just like any other day that I just scrolling through, and I saw this post. I saw someone like talking about like a journey, transitioning from being an architect to being like something else. I was like, okay, let me read through. And I was reading, and the person said, I moved from being an architect. I started practicing briefly, and then I said, no, this is not it for me. And then I left it, and then I went to branding, and I said, okay, who is this person? Okay, then left branding, created businesses, which you have now. Like you have a Gird, and you have what's the other one called? The card company.
Flevor.
Okay, Flevor, and you have Flevor, right? And you built those businesses. I also did similar things. You have a clothing brand. I have a clothing brand. I mean, now I'm trying to like really strategize, but yeah, I had a clothing brand functional like for at least like 5 years. Obviously.
Oh, you forgot to mention that you also sold greeting cards as well.
Oh my goodness. How would I forget that? Yeah. When I was actually young, when I was still in secondary school, I used to I'm always very crafty and handy, like with things. I used to like wonder how cards were made. And then I found someone who was in my church then. It was like a senior, more senior brother. And I realized he used to make these handmade cards. I was like, I need to see what this guy is making. I need to see how he makes it. So I told him, I said, like, I would like to, you know, come and have just, it. I was very young. Like, I was probably like 8.
Wow.
Like, yeah, I was that young. I was like, let me just come and see how you put these cards together. Because in my church, we used to have like like a stand where entrepreneurs can like display their stuff. So you used to display stuff there. And then people that want to buy it would just go there and just say, oh, I want this card, I want this Bible, I want this cover, I want this notepad or anything. So he used to have his cards there, and I was like, these cards are nice. So I told him, I said, I won't mind like coming to you to just see how you do these things. And that was it. From there, I just learned how cards were made. My house was always packed with like cardboard straw boards, like cutters, I had everything. So I started making cards. Trust me, I still have some cards even till today. If I dig deep, some handmade cards. I used to make like Bible covers, notepad covers. I would bind like an entire book with like straw board. Like I used to go to Yaba then. Yaba like what's
Yeah.
that? Jibu,
Artwork.
Artworld, like I used to go
Yeah.
to Artworld then. So like all that, that is also something that we share. Like obviously that's like something that we also have in common. So when I saw the
Mhm.
cards, I was like, what is going on here? Who is this guy? Things don't happen by chance. As I said, like, when we spoke earlier, I believe that there is a reason why we came across each other like on social media. And I feel like there's so much in terms of what our stories can impact people that are thinking of, because it's not just us. There are other
Mhm.
people that are also like probably thinking of how
Yeah.
they can go about like transitioning. A lot of
Yeah.
creatives, we are all creatives, right? As like you can be a designer, you can be an architect, you can be a music producer, you can be an artist. We're all creatives, like we turn
Yeah.
ideas into something. So I think
Mhm.
that's just what creativity is, making something out of nothing. Someone can be hearing this and be wondering, like, how can I leave something that I'm doing now that I'm not really passionate about? I'm not finding fulfillment. And how do I navigate getting there? So I think these kind of stories would be
Definitely
like
help.
a motivation or something for them, a reference for them to help them to navigate those decisions. But yeah,
Mm.
those are the things that that definitely
Similarities.
struck me
True.
as
True. True.
similarities between two of us. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
let's talk more about you and your
All right.
journey.
I was
So
I was
like,
about to answer the question about pragmatism
oh yeah, yeah,
before we
please.
jump to
Yeah.
similarities. So for me, what being pragmatic did for me was it helped me to come out of that shell of being a creative for creativity's sake. What I
Mm,
realized early enough was, the being a creative was becoming a buzzword. Once you can design, you're creative. Once you're a fashion designer, you're creative. Once you're a poet, you're creative. And somehow everybody, or not everybody, some people started to just be creative for creative's sake. They weren't thinking about it on a value level. They were just obsessed with creativity. So people will spend time trying to be creative. You see designers designing their portfolio so that other designers will be impressed.
mm.
And that was just never me. I mean, it was me at some points because I got into the bubble. And then I realized I wasn't earning money with this thing because I was trying to be a designer for designers. And
Mm-hmm.
then one experience opened my eyes. There was someone I taught how to design. And because this guy was not a designer, I was just a business guy. And I taught him how to design. A few months later, he was telling me about the kind of clients he was working with. I was like, what? I was like,
Mm.
I can design better than you. I learned how to design earlier than you. I taught you everything you know, and you're landing bigger clients than me. It was at that point that I knew there was more to design than designing. So I started to move into learning about the business of design, learning about how this thing called design can actually make a difference in the lives of people, because it was clear that it wasn't about the beauty of your design. It was about how functional can your design be. In architecture, we learn about aesthetic versus functionality. And so the
Mm-hmm.
best design, we want to merge a mix of both. Only be functional and still be aesthetically appealing. And thankfully, that background helped me even as a creative, because I wasn't thinking about the beauty of it. I was thinking, is this going to work? Is this going to give you the products? Is this going to help your business in the way that it's meant to? So when I started to learn more about branding and positioning, and how it's more about the product and the people, not so much about the fanciness, it was easy for me to embrace that, because I already learned about how to be functional. I learned about how money responds to value and not beauty. So I moved into being a pragmatic creative because I stopped being obsessed about the creative process. I started being obsessed about creating value. So
Absolutely.
that's what transitioned me into being a pragmatic creative, because I didn't care about beauty. I cared about beauty, but I cared more about the numbers. I cared more about the impact. I cared more about the influence it was going to have, whatever thing I was doing. Is it useful? Can it make meaning? Will people understand this? Or are people just
Mm.
going to say, wow, that's so nice? I want it to be useful. I want it to make sense and achieve a particular result. So yeah, that's how my pragmatism helped me. And so it helped me not just even in being creative, it helped me even in music. When I'm creating music, I create music with purpose. this music I'm creating is not just because I feel good and I just don't feel like expressing myself. It's a means to an end, you know. And yeah, that's the journey for being a pragmatic creative for me.
What would you say that, for someone who is listening now, they're unsure about like a decision, a key decision, like maybe like choosing like whether it's like a career path or and they're thinking about something they're really, really passionate about, and but there's a confusion in their head about, oh, which one do I choose? Even with the times that we're in, there's so much pressure, in terms of career choices, especially with the
Mhm.
tech, as we know it. Even though, yeah, rightly, it's the future, right? A lot of things are going to revolve around tech, but there's still a lot more outside tech. There's still a lot
Mhm.
more careers that are not tech, but you can find fulfillment in them. You can be an
Mhm.
artist, you can be a musician, you can be a lawyer, you can be a doctor, you can impact as much lives as someone that is also into tech. And you can also make good money. What would you say, right, to that young person who is in that position where they're about to make a decision of their career?
If you're listening and you're trying to develop a career path and you want to make a choice, I think you have to first understand that university isn't the end. University is literally just to make you, for lack of better words, literate. Like the
Mm,
university process is literally just to help you understand how to learn things, by yourself, and how to show the things that you have learned. That's why we do a project at the end of university. And that's why many times your lecturers will come give you handouts, say a few things, expect you to go and learn about it, come back and write tests. So that whole process is meant to teach you how to learn things, how to understand things, and how to present what you have learned in the context of solving a problem. So as long as you're able to learn that in university, when you leave the university, whether you want to change careers or not, as you can see in today's world, people are changing careers every day, except some particular field like medicine or law, where they are, very, very regulated, where you literally have to have a degree to practice there. But apart from those types of career paths, most other career paths are learnable. You can graduate as a fine art student and go into and start coding. You can study chemical engineering and literally go into being a contractor. As long as you learn how to be literate, how to be learned, you learn how to learn, and you learn how to communicate with people. University is the time where you want to learn as many soft skills as possible. It's true you want to come out with a first class, that's true, that's good, that's fine, but more than all those things is learning how the world works. So the university is sort of like a micro world where you want to function in, that when you come out, some of the things you've learned, even though they may not exactly relate directly, but you've learned it in a seed form and you can, you know, apply it in real life. So don't stress over the course you want to learn, except it's a professional course like medicine or law where you have to be regulated. If you want to do any of those ones, know what you're doing and choose it. And those kind of people are passionate. I have a friend who studied microbiology. That was not what she wanted to do. She graduated and went back to study medicine. So
mm,
she was really passionate about it, as in she's still in
yeah.
university right now. So you can imagine how many years that is. So those kind of people are passionate. If you're that type of person, follow your passion, because nothing else you do will satisfy you. Even if you're not making any money, as long as you love it, that's good. But if you want to be pragmatic, university is a means to an end. At the end of the day, you want to do whatever works. You can study chemical engineering and you may not find a chemical engineering job. You find a job as a contractor and you're making cool money. You hire one of the chemical engineers, in fact. So, the way life is, it's not
Valid.
straightforward.
Yeah.
It's not really straightforward. So don't be too fixated on the course you are learning. Be more fixated on your ability to build yourself, on your ability to learn new things, on your ability to deliver value. As long as you learn how to do that, no matter what course you learn in university, you'll be able to make something for yourself.
Part of your story, as I read on LinkedIn, was uh, at some point you worked as an architect in an architectural firm, right?
Yeah.
And and they offered you some money from that story. They're paying you some amount of money, which God, I don't know how much. I don't know. Maybe you mentioned the amount, but
What's
yeah,
the
I
key?
have an idea. Was it 40K?
Yeah.
40K, okay. Okay. And they were paying you 40,000 naira. I don't even know what value that was then. Or, yeah, it's still no amount, not money. Yeah, but yeah. They were paying you 40,000 naira. And At what point did you decide that was it? Like you had enough. What point was it? What was the breaking point for you?
So at the time I graduated from university, I started learning how to do design already. So I was already getting a few clients here and there because I was printing, and
Yeah.
people who print many times need someone to design stuff for them sometimes. So we have people who are at events, who they want to do the certificates. Can you do it? Oh, of course, I will design it and print for them. So I was getting design money, getting printing money at the same time. So by the time I got out of university for BSc, I went to a firm and I had a relationship with the firm already. So I started working. We didn't even discuss terms because I was just like, oh, these are my guys. So we started working. And then at the end of the 4th week, now here's the interesting thing. When I did my interview at that architecture firm, they didn't even hire me as an architect. They hired me as a brand manager. Now, the reason why they did that was because during the interview process, through our conversations, because of how I am typically, I'm very honest. So in my interview process, bulk of the things I was saying were revolving around branding, brand management, building identities and stuff like that. So he was like, are you sure you're an architect? But I still want to hire you. And because I knew what it meant to be an architect, and he could prove that I knew that. So I was a double-edged sword because if they needed me to do architecture work, I could do it. And I mean, I would also do branding work for them. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
So they hired me as a brand manager. I still used to go to sites. I used to do regular architecture things, but I also was working on the branding end of the company. So at that point, I was already working on, rebranding because their logos and everything. I was working on all of that. Now, the interesting thing was at the end, when I had a conversation with HR was like, so the salary for this role is 40,000 naira. I was living in Ojota. The office was at Apapa. Anybody who knew that journey in 2015 knows the amount of traffic, number one, and then the amount of time. I used to wake up by 4:30 a.m. to meet up with someone by 5 a.m. to make it to the office for 7 a.m. Doing that morning,
like
evening, for 40K, that's 10K per week. That's 2.5 per day. So apart from my transport, it will just cover for buying a few snacks. And so I told the HR woman, I said, honestly, this amount, if I sat down in my house with my laptop and I was doing graphic design alone, I would make this amount a week. Why should I come from Ojota to Apapa to do this? So I was like, you know what? This is not going to work. And what happened was I ended up quitting the job. And because I started working on the rebrand for them, they were aware of it. I just turned it into a contract. So I gave them a full rebrand. And guess what? They paid me 275,000 naira for the rebranding project.
There you go.
So I was like, you guys had enough money to pay me for this, and you wanted to offer me 40K a month to do almost the same thing and more. I was at that point, I knew business was the way.
That's terrible.
I mean, obviously, right now I'm still doing my business and my career. So I'm not trying to say there's no hope in career because I still do career as well. So I knew at that point that if I was going to do any career, it has to be on a high level where if they're paying me any salary, it has to be generous enough to be able to keep the value that I'm offering. So that was the point I said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. Thankfully, it was close to the time when one of my family friends was just like, what are you doing? You finish your architecture, are you not doing your master's? I was like, I'm trying to work where I don't have money. He was like, you know what, I'll send you 250K. How much is your salary? 500. So that's half of it. Find the remaining half. So thankfully, I went into school. I used business to finish up the rest, and then I paid. And, at that time, thankfully, I didn't need to pay immediately. Thankfully, that was something that was happening at that time. So I didn't need to pay immediately. I paid the 250. I said I was going to pay the rest before it was time for exam. They allowed me. Before it was time for exam, I was able to gather the rest of the money, and then I paid. And that's how that happened.
Seems like you've hustled a lot.
A lot. And to think that I ended up having an extra year. So you need to know why I'm so pained, because
you had an extra year.
Yeah, and the extra year was simply because of one wicked lecturer, bro. Wicked lecturer. One course.
I didn't know they do that in CU as well, but okay.
Well, yeah. No. So it's not your classic wickedness. It's a situation where the school had issues with power. I didn't have a laptop. I was using the desktop in university at the time. There wasn't light in school, and I didn't have a laptop. So that's all I was using. And because there was no light, I couldn't work. And architectural laptops are not laptops you can borrow from any other person. They were high-end laptops, and there was nothing I could do. I kept complaining, but there was nothing I could do. And then time for jury came. External invigilators saw my work. They were like, well, you have something going on here. You just need a little more time to finish up. So when will you be done? I give them a timeline. Guess what my HOD said? He said, don't worry, leave him. He's going to come back and do it next year.
Jeez.
As in, external invigilators literally said, you can have some more time to do it. And my own HOD said, don't worry, he's going to come back and do it next year. And that was it.
I think every department always has that one person.
This guy was the king.
Anyone from Unilag that's hearing this would be able to understand what I mean by that. Like, yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's just a Nigerian thing. I think there's a particular university that prides itself in doing that. No names mentioned. But yeah, there's a very popular federal university that prides itself in how many extra years you can get from some people. Yeah, that's just terrible. But yeah, the experiences you've shared, those are very, very interesting ones. So how did it go on from then? When you left the architectural firm, what did you start doing, and how did you go on and on? I know you're now into public speaking. You also have your pastoral thing going, and from the last conversation we had, you still have some things in your on your bucket list that you still want to do. So like, how have you evolved? From that past to like where you currently are and then still going on. How have you evolved?
So from when I left that job, I started to do my master's. So while I was doing my master's, I was working on that project for the rebrand. I used the money that I made from that project to balance my school fees. So I had 1 year where I was just working, doing master's, printing, learning about graphic design, learning about branding, reading about branding. Basically, that was it. Doing architecture, doing business. I kept doing the materials business as well. On MSc1, MSc2. At the end of second year of master's, I just kept doing all those businesses. And at the point when I had the extra year, I had to go because there was no other thing that I was doing. It was just one course and it wasn't a coursework. I literally just needed to finish up my project. So I didn't have to come for any classes. So I went out, I was working. I worked at a financial services company as a graphic designer. I worked there for about 3 months. From there, I moved into an ed tech consultancy. I worked there for 1 year as a graphic designer, comms person. From there, I moved to Abuja. At that point, my girlfriend she was my girlfriend then, she was my friend, but she was moving to Abuja. I was like, oh, I really like this girl, let me move to Abuja too. And my church was opening a branch as well at the same time. So I was like, let me use 2 stones to kill 1 bird and 1 bird to kill 2 stones. Let me go and help with starting the church. And then that happened. I was working, before I left Lagos, I was working with a tech startup, actually. That was Nairabox, with a tech startup. I was there for 1 month. They had an office in Abuja, and I was like, okay, guys, I'm moving to Abuja. Can I move to the Abuja office? I didn't get a clear answer, but I moved anyways because the answer wasn't going to change my movement. So I said, by the time I got to the Abuja office, they were like, you know what, it can't work. So I just left the job. I moved to working with Thrive Greek. I worked with Thrive Greek for a few months as well. Then from then on, because I was in Abuja, I started to get consultancies for graphic design,
Okay.
Before I moved, while I was working in Lagos, that was when I started Props Genie. So that's something else. So the story of that was, one of my friends had a wedding, was in 2016. She wanted to make props for her wedding. So she's like, oh, can I do it? And I was like, oh yeah, I can do it. So I made the props. Oh, it was really good. Everybody was like, wow, this is so good, so good. I was like, interesting. So I got back home. I was like, since people like it, I took pictures. I created an Instagram account. I opened Twitter page. I just did everything. I was looking for a name. I said props and all. Props and all was taken. I said I want something magical. I thought of Props Genie. Props Genie was available on all the platforms. I was like, good, Props Genie. So I did mock-ups. I put it out. I used all the hashtags. You won't believe, 2 weeks later, I saw some guys who were doing activations for Syrup in Lagos, and they reached out to me. They wanted to do props, like 50 props. That was the biggest money I'd made from props at that point. And then I delivered I saw Banky W was there, some other big people were there. They took pictures in the props. I was like, wait, how did you guys find me? And they were like, they just searched for props in Lagos and they found me.
Wow.
I'm like, what? And so that's how I continued. So I was doing that while I was working. And then by the time I moved to Abuja, I tried to start doing that in Abuja, but it wasn't working as well as Lagos because, Abuja is not that kind of place. So
Yeah.
I moved that business over to my sister. So my sister is still currently running that business right now.
Oh.
Now I'm in Abuja, and then there's NGOs. I started to get NGO consultancies. And then it was while I was in Abuja that I transitioned, because while I was in Lagos, I was still making handmade greeting cards. But then when I moved to Abuja, I was still making handmade greeting cards for some people, if it was those big ones where the money was enough for me to ship it to Lagos. But at some point, I was like, you know what, maybe I should start doing printed greeting cards. So that's the idea. That was when the idea for Flevor came. Before then, it was just greeting cards, And then Flevor came. I created a website. It was using Shopify initially before we ended up creating our custom websites. So people would order greeting cards. We found a printing partner in Lagos, found a printing partner in Abuja. So that's how the business was running. Between then and now, I ended up starting a design agency called Banisoro. And then from then, 2021 was when I started my clothing brand with my wife, Gird. And from then till now, it's just been running all three businesses and consultancy, building my career. Public speaking came up in the mix 2 years ago when I became a pastor. Obviously, it became one of the most important things I had to do, which was learning how to speak.
Yeah.
So I started to pay attention to that, learning videos. From GS2, I joined Digging Deep Teachers. So
what do you call it?
Digging Deep Teachers. So that's like Bible study
teachers. Oh yeah, Bible school. Yeah.
Yeah, so I joined Bible study teachers, and then I joined Sunday school teachers. So from secondary school, I was literally teaching twice a week, every week.
See.
And then at some point, they needed a debate team, and they were looking for people. And then one teacher was just like, "You Rotimi, chapel prefect. Don't you talk every time? You should be able to do debate." I was like, And then I went, and then I did it. And she was like, "Wow, you did so great." I was like, So that was when I realized, okay, I could speak. And then I got to university, obviously. I didn't have the opportunity to do that. But when it was time, I became a pastor. I was teaching every time. And then I figured something I wanted to build. Thankfully, all that time I spent learning and teaching laid a good foundation. So the question for me wasn't a matter of shyness or stage fright. Right now, it was now a case of polishing my accent, polishing my English, polishing my language, learning how to take pauses, learning how to speak fluidly, learning all of those things. And all of that happened, learning on YouTube. My lead pastor, Apostle Aaron, he also spent a lot of time training us on how to speak as well. So that's something else that helped me. And I was able to apply that knowledge even onto other areas of my life, apart from spiritual teaching. I'm teaching people branding. And I figured early enough that one of the things I really love to do was teach people. So it was something that I also started doing, teaching people about branding, teaching people about how to grow their businesses, teaching people about how to be the best versions of themselves, how to inspire people. Most of my friends, they made me realize how, it's like every time they want to do something, as long as they tell me, I'm just like, you must get it done, you must get it done. What's left? And so I figured and I realized over time that one of the things that I'm very passionate about is really helping people build stuff, helping people transition from ideas to action. So those are the things that I've spent all my time doing. And up until this year, eventually I ended up becoming an international public speaker because I had speaking engagements in Kenya. So that's good.
Wow.
Good progress for the journey for me. So right now, it's not so much about the skill or whether it's public speaking or branding or anything. It's about the fact that everything I'm doing is still centered around helping people express themselves as much as possible. And that's literally what I'm all about right now.
It's amazing. That's amazing. I think I listened to one of my favorite speakers, and there's something that he said that I think I would also take into learning, and I think you probably have applied as well. So like oftentimes like our fears, like the things that we're most uncomfortable about, or I think this step like that we take towards like overcoming those fears. One of them is actually like putting ourselves in those positions where we actually now start to do those things. For me, like I told you earlier, like doing this podcast was just an idea. It was just nothing but an idea. It was just an idea. I was not working towards, actually making it happen. Because if I was, I'd have gotten equipment, I'll have written my ideas down, I'll have invited someone to be a guest, or I'll have decided whether it's going to be a solo or a guest and host kind of thing. But I wasn't. But the moment when I got that light bulb was when I saw your post, right? And sometimes we think that, oh, this is something that I just cannot do. I just can't do. But we must recognize that light bulb moment, because the world is telling us something, or God is telling us something, that this is your cue. This is your cue to actually do it. Like, start it. And for me, I've been ruminating over this over the last 2 weeks, and I've just been like, God, I hear you loud and clear. Like, this is something I've been uncomfortable trying to do, and now I'm in a spot where I must do it. So personal commitment, like committing to it. Like, someone told me something, another speaker said something, said, whenever I have an idea, whenever I want to do something, an event, because he plans events. Whenever I have an event to plan, I just set a date and announce it. I just set it. The moment he sets the date and announces it, then he must work towards it. Everything is rolling, like whether it's the money, the budget, just like this podcast. Like, the moment I told you, I said, David, I want you to be the first guest on this podcast. I'm like, yes, go and do it. Go and do it. I'll be waiting for you. I was like, oh, geez, this guy didn't say I'm busy. I have an engagement. Oh God, why didn't he just say he's busy or something? Because that's like my inner fear talking. But then, you came out and said, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. Almost as if we knew each other from way back or something. I was like, I was expecting just someone to just say, I'll get back to you. You know how people do that. I'll get back to you. And I'll check my schedule and let you know. I was expecting that kind of response. I wasn't looking forward to too much. I was like, oh, this person is a speaker. He's busy. He's traveling, doing things. And that was just the cue. That was the moment. That was the light bulb moment. I was just like, okay, this person is actually ready, and he's actually now pushing me, motivating me to do it. So I think I give you credit for that. Thank you so much for that push. I tell you what, that same day, I went on Amazon, started checking equipment, went on YouTube. I don't even think I slept that day. Like, I went on YouTube, started checking how to do podcast, how to use guests to do podcast, how to do it through virtual. I'm like, what kind of what kind of stress is it? I have to use Zoom. I have to use Google. I'm like, oh, it's too much. Okay, just breathe. Just breathe. Just breathe. My wife would just be like, babe, you got this. You got this. You got this.
That's another thing. Get you a supportive wife.
Yeah, I mean, like, for sure. I mean, we'll have times we'll talk about this. Like, I know you're very passionate about your marriage as well. I've seen some of your content, and I can see that we have that connection as well. My wife and I, like, we are, like, it's best friends or nothing. Like, for me, it's best friends or nothing. Best friends for life. My wife is my partner, everything. You can see she was the one setting up this thing for me. So, like, yeah, get a partner, get a like supportive partner by all means, because Bible says one will chase 1,000, two will chase 10,000. It's basically that's the case. I tell my friends something. I say, my life is 10,000 times better than it would have been if I were alone, right? If I were single. And that's not to say that being single doesn't work for some people, but I know the kind of person I am, and I know what my strengths and my weaknesses are. I figured that having someone, I got married at 27, and I said, having someone as a partner to do life together with is an absolute for me. Once I have the means, once everything aligns, yeah, I won't hesitate. So it's very crucial. And that's just digressing, but yeah, very, very valid. So yeah, thank you so much, David. I think listeners would have benefited so much from hearing from you, in terms of your journey, in terms of how you've transitioned from being that architect that was frustrated, going from Ojota to Apapa, being that young architect that used to be like, what am I doing here? Why are you paying me 40,000 naira? I can't sit down in my house and make 40,000 naira. and becoming who you are now, someone who is passionate about what you're doing, you're enjoying doing what you're doing, and you're still hungry to become more, to
Mm,
fulfill more of that passion, to
mm.
bring some of those ideas that you still have maybe written down somewhere to life, to inspire others, to change lives, to help people, to help businesses. So, do you have any word for, you know, any young person that is, maybe they are already practicing what they're doing now? Maybe they're an architect, or maybe they're just a designer, or maybe they have some business ideas that they have in their minds. Do you have some nuggets that you can share how they can get out of those thoughts, bringing those ideas to life and making them, building them into businesses like you've done? Do you have some of those to share?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things with moving from ideas to products is really defining your purpose in your mind and to yourself. When you do that, what that's going to help you do is you are not conformed to what you think you should be doing. You are now more focused on what the solution should be. So the process is not what you're obsessed with, it's the solution. So that's going to open you up to partnership. It's going to open you up to trying new things. It's going to open you up to research. It's going to open you up to asking questions. It's going to
Mm.
open you up to doing the barest minimum, anything that drives you closer to that goal. The reason why that's important is when we think about doing things generally, when somebody says, oh, my passion is to entertain people, some people immediately think, oh, I have to be a comedian. You don't have to be a comedian to entertain people. You can entertain people with music, you can entertain people with mathematics, you can entertain people with so many different things. The idea is that you want to have an overarching purpose that you are hanging everything that you do around. And because when things aren't exactly making sense, when you try one way and it's not working, because you have the same goal, it's easy for you to try something else, knowing that you are still aiming for the same thing. And if that thing doesn't work, you can try another thing again. So you will never be confined to one particular occupation or
Absolutely.
process or profession or business. No. All of that is going to be secondary because all those things are a means to an end. You can be a musician as a means to an end. You can be a pilot as a means to an end. All those things then become secondary because you have an overarching goal, an overarching purpose that defines what you want to achieve as an individual and the change that you want to see in the world. I think that's the first step when it comes to moving from idea to execution. Apart from that, one other thing that I think would help many people is just taking it one step at a time.
Mm.
And don't be obsessed by people's success. Your journey is so different that if you try to compare it to someone else, you'll be doing yourself a disservice because all the experiences you've had were there for a reason. All the experiences they have had are there for a reason. The reason why you can't exactly directly contrast your life with someone else's is because your stories are completely different. Your experiences are completely different. Your talents are completely different. No matter what the similarities are, there are huge milestones of difference that you can't reconcile. So if you want to be inspired by people, that's fine. But to compare yourself directly with someone and say, look, this person is doing this, why can't I do it? You'll be making a great mistake. And what that's going to do is going to free you such that if you're taking one step at a time and all your mates are taking 10 steps at a time, you know what your limitations are, you'll be fine with it. You know what your goal is, you'll be fine with it. The fact that they're taking 10 steps at a time sometimes means they will go farther than you. And it's not the end of the world. Some other times it doesn't mean they will go farther than you. Sometimes the one step you're taking is more foundational, and in the future you would end up going farther than them. But your goal shouldn't be competitive, like I'll catch you guys in front, or you guys are going ahead of me. Hey, what am I going to do? Your goal should be, this is my journey, this is my process. How can I make the most of it? How can I enjoy it to the best of my ability? How can I use every experience that I've had in my life to have the greatest impact on me and on people around me? If you're obsessed with that, trust me, you will enjoy your life, whether you think you have the outcomes that people expect from someone like you or not. I think those two things are just going to help you move from idea to execution because now you're not really looking for validation from anybody. You just want to do what you want to do. You become your own judge, and God becomes your own judge because He is the one that's giving you all those talents and He wants you to use it. And as long as you're using them to the best of your ability, as long as you're using them the way that He would have you use them, I think you'll be good.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, David. So, okay, David, my last question, closing question, right? Every guest that comes to this podcast will be asking them this question. What are you working towards right now to achieve your goals?
What I'm working towards right now to achieve my goals is to build enough spiritual capital. That's actually what I'm doing right now. And the reason why I'm doing that is because that's the anchor on which every other thing that I do is connected to. So more than any skill that I may want to learn, more than any opportunity that I may want to access, more than any person I may want to meet, just building that depth of spiritual capital in terms of my convictions, in terms of who I am, who I believe God wants me to be, who God would have me be, how my conviction affects my normal life, with my family, my ministry, my walk with God as an individual. I need that conviction to be so strong that every other thing that I do, nothing else that I do will go off tangent from that point. So that's literally what I'm working on right now. Since you asked right now. Yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
If you've stayed till the end of this video, I need you to do one thing for me. Like and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is going to continue, and we're going to be having more guests, and we're going to be having more insightful conversations. I look forward to having you.